Hello and welcome to Queen Things. I'm KJ Miller. I'm a founder, a lecturer, a content creator, a Love is Blind fan, and a white news reporter. And I'm excited to talk to all of you today because we have a lot of things I want to get into. It's another pop culture rundown. A lot of things in the news, a lot of things going on. What are some of those things? Well, we have to talk about Tyra. Now, I will say, because I did an entire episode on Tyra Banks back when this podcast was still called Two Queens, Two Crowns, I feel like my opinion here is necessary. The world needs my perspective. So if you haven't seen, Tyra has a new documentary. I shouldn't say she does. America's Next Top Model has a documentary, and she doesn't look so good in it. So we're going to talk about Tyra. We're going to talk about the BAFTAs. We must talk about what went down at the BAFTAs. I actually made a TikTok about it and never posted it. I felt like I wanted to give my thoughts in long form. So we're going to talk about that. We do have some white news and we do have some black news. And then we have to end with Love is Blind. We simply must. We simply must. I've been watching, I've been obsessing, and I know not all of you watch Love is Blind. Hopefully I'm going to talk about it in a way that draws you in, even if you aren't keeping up with the series. That's the hope. We're going to get into all of that. So let's get into it. All right. But before we get into the main topics, I do want to remind you to join the Patreon. If you like me, if you like this content, you get a bonus episode every month, which is why this week you're going to get 2 episodes. I was sick last week. Did I mention that? I was sick last week. That's why I didn't do an episode. Very sick. I also barely posted on social last week. Like, I truly was just very sick, also traveling for work. However, you're getting 2 episodes this week, including our bonus episode, where I will be diving into sort of the early history of Beyonce and Taylor, some of the early business decisions that they were making, the influences behind those business decisions, the similarities we see, the differences we see behind how they were approaching their career. I'm really going to do a deep dive on that. That was a suggestion from one of you from the survey. Thank you for that. So that'll be this month's bonus episode. I encourage you to sign up, patreon.com/Queen Things. And now let's get into this show. Okay, I'm back. I had to pause because I was ashy, but I'm not ashy any longer. Fun fact, one of the brands I run is launching something soon to help deal with the ash. I can't tell you which brand, and I can't tell you what the product is, but you'll know more in about 2.5 months. All right, let's begin with Tyra Banks. Now, I did watch the documentary. It's called Reality Check. It's on Netflix, and it is about America's Next Top Model. If you aren't someone who watched America's Next Top Model while it was on, let me tell you, it was a time. It really did take over the nation, or as far as I'm concerned, it took over my little college community. I remember watching it in college and talking about it. And it really was a cultural phenomenon, which they go into great detail on in the documentary, how we never really had a show like this. Yes, we had reality TV, but the way Tyra describes it, which I thought was a pretty apt description, was she kind of wanted to take Survivor and the real world and like put it together. I think that's how she described it. Like basically a competition show where you still get to see the competitors like at home and like what they're talking about when they get home. So you're not just seeing them complete the challenges, you're also seeing kind of digging into their real life. And as far as I know, she really was kind of a pioneer in that setup. And it was riveting. And I definitely watched the first several cycles, probably at least the first like 5 or 6. I think it went on to have something like 20 different cycles. Like I didn't hang on that long, but certainly in the beginning, I was in it, you know, like the rest of America. And so what this documentary dives into is how the show kind of started to devolve as they got more and more popular. The expectations, I think this is how Tyra would put it, the expectations got higher. People wanted even crazier challenges. People wanted even more drama between the girls and the models and the judges and everything else. Like they had to keep delivering. They were essentially the cash cow for UPN, the most successful show on UPN by far. And every cycle they had to deliver. And so every cycle you see things get crazier. Now, Tyra is currently catching a lot of flack because it feels like she isn't taking accountability for how terrible things really did get. And I will say, what I'm struck by in watching the documentary, I keep thinking back to our episode we did on Tyra and Naomi. We'll link it in case you haven't listened to it yet. I thought it was a really nice episode. I keep thinking back to what Tyra expressed about Naomi, both in interviews and also to Naomi herself when she had Naomi on her talk show, about how she really felt like there could only be one at a time, or at least that was the messaging that was, sort of like being given to her. There could only be one successful Black girl at a time, and how hard it was for her coming up, how she wanted to be able to look to Naomi as a role model, but Naomi very much was of the mindset like it can only be one of us. So kind of looked at her as a threat. Again, Tyra's words, and Tyra's sentiments, and how much that impacted her and how hard it made it for her as a model. And so ostensibly, part of the reason she was so excited to create this show is because she wanted to give the world a different view of what it could mean to be a top model. It doesn't have to be stick thin. It doesn't have to be blonde and blue-eyed. It can come in many different shapes and sizes, right? That was the goal. And I do believe that was the goal. Like, I believe that's where things started. Here's the thing about crabs in a barrel mentality. That mentality exists for a reason. It exists because you are told by the higher ups, by the powers that be, only one of you can make it. We actually don't have enough space for everybody. There isn't enough room for everybody to make it. And so what are you going to do? What are you willing to do to be the one who makes it? So Tyra was already used to that mindset and used to that treatment as a model. And I think even though she set out with good intentions to subvert those expectations and those norms, in the end, to me, it seems like they still got the better of her. And so instead of it being there can only be one Black girl model at a time, I think she sort of internalized the idea that there can only be one top show at UPN. And right now, that spot is yours. What are you going to do to defend it? And the answer kept being, I'm going to do more. And so we see this play out in a number of different ways. I think most tragically with the story of Shandy, who is a model who, and I remember this season. I want to say I remember it very vividly. I remember her story. It stuck out that much. This is a model who, very young, I think she may have been 21 or so when she gets on the show. She comes from like Kansas or Wisconsin. I'm going to forget which state, a flyover state. Okay. No shade, but a flyover state of some sort, I believe. Anyway, she works at Walgreens. She looks very mousy, very nerdy. Turns out, even though she looks mousy and nerdy, homegirl can model, okay? She's killing every shoot. She's out here giving you poses, just smizing, all of it. And one day they're in Milan, and they go on these go-sees, and the go-sees, the way they get around is on mopeds driven by a bunch of these men, Italian men. And somebody decides to invite the Italian men over to the house they're staying in for dinner. Now, Shandy doesn't remember who invited them, and we, the viewers, don't know who invited them. It might have been one of the other models. It could have been production. We don't know. Someone invites them over, and they all start drinking. And according to Shandy, she has by herself something like 2 bottles of wine. And if you haven't seen the documentary or you aren't familiar with Shandy, let me tell you, she looks like she weighs about 80 pounds soaking wet. She is so thin. The thought of her having 2 bottles of wine, no matter how much she had to eat, sounds insane. But also, according to her, she had almost nothing to eat. So looking at her, just knowing how physics and biology works, 2 bottles of wine on that frame is going to put you out. It's going to put you under. So she's very, very drunk. And by the way, I haven't mentioned this. She has a boyfriend. So she has a boyfriend at home in the United States, in the flyover state. Okay. But she's in Milan getting drunkety drunk and starts flirting with one of these Italian men. Now everybody's in the hot tub. Shandy's laughing. She's flirting. And I'm going to tell you how it read before I watched this documentary, just thinking back to it when I was watching this, like I said, in college. I think I would have still been in college when the season came out. It read like she was drunk, but it didn't read like she was incapacitated to me. Now, that could have very well been editing, but my recollection of it is that she read as drunk, but still coherent enough to make decisions. And we see her in the hot tub flirting, and then we see her basically go to bed with this man. And like, not go to bed, but like have sex with this man. And then we see her reaction afterwards where she feels terrible. Like she's crying, she's having the worst reaction. Then we see her phone call with her boyfriend where she tells him, and they're both sobbing. It was honestly, this is why this moment is seared into my brain. I had never seen anything like it. I don't think I've seen anything like it since. Like, it just felt so raw and painful. She's sobbing. She's on the floor, sobbing while she's talking to this man. You hear his side of the phone call. He's sobbing, but also he's yelling. He's angry. He calls her a stupid fucking bitch, is my recollection. He's like, how could you do this to us? We were supposed to be together forever. Terrible. Okay? Terrible. Well, what we learned from the documentary is she was, in fact, incapacitated. She was blackout drunk. She was at the point where she didn't remember anything. And I think most people would say when you're at that level of drunkenness, you really can't give consent. Now, I don't want to get into the finer moments or the finer points of like, did she actually give consent or did she not give consent? I don't know the answer to that. And I don't want to speculate. I think it's too serious of a topic to speculate on. Was it consensual or wasn't it consensual? I'm just saying, I think legal experts would agree if you're at the point where you can't remember anything happening to you and you're not, that you're incapacitated. Okay. There's a reason when people talk about consent, they say it should be a, like enthusiastic and sober yes, right? Or if not fully sober, I forget how people phrase it. Let me look it up. Let me not. Hold on. Okay, I found the acronym here. This is a Planned Parenthood infographic I'm looking at, but I've heard this before. So the acronym is FRIES, FRIES. Consent should be freely given, reversible, informed, enthusiastic, and specific. So I think if you're at the point where you quite literally don't know what's going on and around you, that's what she describes in the documentary. She's like, I remember I was in the hot tub one moment and then I was awake the next moment. So nothing sort of in between all of those moments. So if that's where you are mentally, I think informed is very questionable there. Enthusiastic certainly is questionable. How enthusiastic can you be? You're not even really aware of your surroundings. So I think people would say, I have heard people use the R word to describe it. Certainly I've heard people use, say assault to describe it. And at the very least, I think what seems clear is she was extremely drunk and everybody, including production, was aware and no one did anything to stop it. No one did anything to stop it. And in fact, they filmed it. They filmed all of it. And I would think even that would be enough to let you know this girl is not in her right mind, because I don't know any woman who would be like, I'm perfectly okay with these cameras quite literally filming me in the act of having sex. Mind you, this is 20 something years ago. This is not reality TV of today where y'all are watching, what's that show? Love Island. Y'all are literally watching people have sex while it's going on. Yuck. Like, I don't watch Love Island, but that sounds, I don't want to watch any of that. This is not that. Okay. This is 20 years ago. People were not doing this. So the fact that she didn't even object to that should have made it very clear to production. This person is not in their right mind, and no one did anything to stop it. So that, I think, is probably the most explosive moment that people are referring to when they say they don't see Tyra taking enough accountability, because basically she sort of brushes it off and says, like, I wasn't a part of production. Ma'am, you're the executive producer of the show. So like, I understand, no, you aren't holding the cameras. And I think, by that she meant, like, not only am I not a part of the camera crew, but I'm also not the person like sitting back in the editing bay at all times. But we do know she was in the editing bay at times. And we do know that she was extremely hands-on as it relates to production and filming decisions, particularly in the earlier seasons. So to say like, oh, I wasn't involved in production does feel very much like a brush off. does feel very much like shirking responsibility. And I think we hear that sort of thing from her throughout the documentary in such a way that it has upset people and has made people feel like she isn't taking accountability for how many dangerous things happened on that set, how many problematic things happened on that set. And, I will say I've been a fan of Tyra Banks for a very long time. I I don't necessarily feel like I'm no longer a fan. I think her legacy is still intact, but I do wish that we were seeing more accountability from her in this moment. I can understand, like, in that moment 20 years ago when she was trying to defend her position as, being one of, it had to be a very small handful of Black women executive producing number one shows on networks. Again, Shonda's show wasn't out yet. When did Shonda's show come out? Now, Grey's also premiered when I was in college, I believe. So it might have just been Tyra and Shonda, honestly. And so one of a handful of Black women executive producing a show that's a top show on a network. You're trying to defend that position. I can understand mentally how she kept saying yes, how she kept moving this farther and farther into the realm of unsafe, into the realm of problematic. I can, just from a human perspective, understand that. But now that you've got the benefit of hindsight, you've grown. When you know better, you do better. I very much wish we were seeing more accountability out of Tyra. But this isn't her last chapter. She's not that old. So she's still got time. And I hope with additional reflection, we see something different from her, because I think her story of coming up in the modeling industry as a curvier woman, as a Black woman, with so many hurdles against her, the fact that she was able to do that successfully and having a successful acting career and executive produce a top show and have a number one talk show, that's a real legacy. And I'd like her to concern herself with protecting that legacy by taking accountability. We'll see if she does. And now we're going to talk about the BAFTAs. Before I get into what I'm going to say, I want to just acknowledge it's a sensitive subject all around, and I will not purport to be right? Like, I feel what I feel. I feel pretty strongly about what I feel. I think I'm justified in feeling how I feel, but that doesn't necessarily mean I'm 100% right. I don't know. I want to lead with that, because sometimes in conversations like this, people will comment and say things like, KJ, I usually agree with you, but you got it wrong on this. And I want you to know you're absolutely allowed to feel that way. If anything I'm about to say makes you feel that way, it's not going to change my mind and how I feel about this particular instance. And also, if I'm wrong, then I'm allowed to be wrong, because I think Black people, we just endure so much. We take so much is put on us all of the goddamn time, and we're allowed to be tired. And I am tired. And that's what you are about to hear. Okay. But let me bring you up to speed in case you are not familiar with this story about the BAFTAs. So on Sunday evening were the BAFTA Awards, which stands for British Academy of Film and Television Arts. They had their film awards, their annual film awards. The first award was being handed out by Michael B. Jordan and Delray Lindo of Sinners. And while they were on stage giving their remarks, someone in the crowd yelled out the N-word. Now, who was that someone? His name is John Davidson, and he is a Tourette's syndrome activist, and a film about his life was also nominated that night. Now, what we know about Tourette's is that it causes involuntary tics. This was an involuntary tic. This was not intentional. This was not him yelling out something because he felt that way about these two presenters. It was unintentional. I think we all accept that it was unintentional. It was involuntary. It is a symptom of Tourette's syndrome. I think we all accept that. Here's what I don't accept. I don't accept the idea that because all of that is true, an apology, a sincere apology, is not owed to these two men and to all of the Black people in that room more broadly. And frankly, Black people generally, given that the BBC made the decision to air the ceremony without editing that word out. This is what John Davidson said in a statement. I wanted to thank BAFTA and everyone involved in the awards last night for their support and understanding and inviting me to attend the broadcast. I appreciated the announcement to the auditorium in advance of the recording, warning everyone that my tics are involuntary and are not a reflection of my personal beliefs. I was heartened by the round of applause that followed this announcement and felt welcomed and understood in an environment that would normally be impossible for me. He then continued, in addition to the announcement by Alan Cumming, the BBC, and BAFTA, I can only add that I am and always have been deeply mortified if anyone considers my involuntary tics to be intentional or to carry any meaning. He then concluded this statement, and I'm reading this on Yahoo Entertainment, by saying that I swear, which is the name of the film about his life, more than any film or TV documentary explains the origins, condition, traits, and manifestations of Tourette syndrome. I have spent my life trying to support and empower the Tourette's community and to teach empathy, kindness, and understanding from others, and I will continue to do so. I chose to leave the auditorium early into the ceremony as I was aware of the distress my tics were causing. Okay, so that's his statement. Number one, not an apology. Let's start there. And I think the reason it's not an apology is because, as he says, his actions were involuntary. And so, given that they're involuntary, there shouldn't be a need to apologize because there was no intent behind the word. Here's the thing that I feel like everyone seems to understand until it comes to Black people: impact matters more than intent. These are two men who still had an extremely dangerous, hateful word hurled at them in the middle of what's supposed to be a celebratory night, in the middle of what is a hallmark moment in both of their careers. The harm was inflicted. And so you apologize for the harm you inflicted, not the intention behind the harm, because we do understand there was no ill intent there. But yelling out a racial slur, the N-word, at someone is different than yelling out swear words randomly. Those are different. I hope I don't have to explain why they're different, but they are different. And because the impact of those words are different, the harm inflicted is different. And because there was real harm inflicted, you apologize. And I understand that is going to, irk some people, because they're going to say, well, I have seen people say in comment sections and everywhere else that is ableist. It's not ableist. I'm not suggesting he should have been put in a different room, which I have seen people suggest. I'm not suggesting he shouldn't have been allowed to attend, which I have seen people suggest. I'm not trying to segregate him. I'm not even attempting to reprimand him. I am saying there are rules of social etiquette that it feels like everybody understands and abides by, except when it comes to Black people. And it is just so frustrating and so angering that now, on top of having had the word hurled at them while on stage, they had to watch the BBC play it back, make the decision not to edit it out, listen to a whack-ass, weak-ass apology from Alan Cummings talking about sorry if you were offended, when obviously we were offended, then get this non-apology from the person who said the word, and not get an apology from the BAFTAs until 24 full hours later. More. It is just insult to injury to injury to injury. And I just want you to know, apologizing is free. It's free. And it doesn't take away your agency, and it doesn't belittle the syndrome to say, while it wasn't my intent, it is involuntary. I understand the harm of this word. I understand the harm that was inflicted. And so I'm apologizing for that harm. It's free. It's easy to do. It should have been done. The fact that it wasn't is a real tragedy, in my opinion. And I hate that it feels like we're always in this position where we're just supposed to take it and take it and take it. We're going to get tired of taking it, y'all. And I'll just leave that there. Whew, let's take the temperature down, huh? Let's get into some Black news. I saw this post that I simply have to share with you just because it made me giggle, and it might make you giggle too. Okay, so there is a woman on TikTok. Her handle is Semaj in Focus. I might be mispronouncing her name. If so, I apologize. But she gets online and describes all the things she did to her ex in the month of December. And it's great. So let's listen to it, shall we?
My ex is pressing charges against me for giving him the most eventful month of his life in the month of December. So I figured I'd go ahead and share with you the complete list of 30 things that I did. On day 1, I superglued his gas tank shut. On day 2, I wrote a letter to his mother about a secret child that he's been hiding for 5 years. I made that whole thing up, but my letter was very emotional and believable. On day 3, I sent flowers to his job with a note from his sponsor, implying that he relapsed over the weekend, but that it's okay. On day 4, I had random people show up at his door at all times of the night so that he was sleep deprived and actually looked like an addict at work the next day. On day 5, I made a Tinder profile for him as a down low man who loves aggressive men and asked that they text him. And I said that if he responds negatively, it just means that his girlfriend is nearby, that they should try again later, and also send pics of their junk. On day 6, I wrote a letter to the bank that he was financing his car through, pretending to be him, and I voluntarily surrendered his vehicle. They did, in fact, repossess his car. On day 7, I wrote a letter to his landlord from a concerned neighbor about his addiction and strangers showing up at his door at all times of night, and I said that I was concerned he may be dealing. I weaponized SEO on day 8, and I made a wedding registry so any woman looking to date him will think that he's an engaged cheater. On day 9, I convinced him he has a stalker. On day 10, I mailed him an official letter notifying him that he is being investigated for drug smuggling. On day 11, I mailed him a letter from the Department of Public Health saying he is a person of contact for an antibiotic-resistant strain of super gonorrhea. On day 12...
Well, that video, I mean, does it take a few turns? I thought number 5 was a bit homophobic, but on the whole, it all just seems extremely unhinged in a way that made me giggle. So I don't know if it's real or not. I see a lot of things on TikTok. The list gets increasingly ridiculous. So if she actually did all those things, it's like, oh, girl, you going to jail, girl. Oh, I hope this is a skit. But skit or no, it made me giggle. So I wanted to make you aware of it. I cut it off after a few of those. The list is like 30 things long. So feel free to click the link and enjoy the whole video, should you please. And that is what's going on in Black news. And in white news, I don't have new white news to share. I just want to share that something like 4 out of 5 of my last mega viral videos on social media have been about white news. It has really caught on. And what is so funny to me about that is it was an offshoot of Black news, which I started on this podcast. Like the whole idea was Black news. You guys were here, was sort of like my riff on new news from the what's their little podcast called? On the Heights, in the Heights, New Heights. It was my riff on the New Heights, new news. And I was like, I'm going to do Black news. And I liked it. So I kept doing it. And then one day I was like, what about white news? And white news is what has taken off. And it just is funny to me because why people like hearing about white people from a Black girl, I don't know. It has piqued people's interest. And again, something like 80% of my viral videos have been white news. So we'll include some of the most recent ones below if you haven't seen them yet. I do think they're pretty funny. I just want to share that is one of those things that, like, when it comes to content creation, you just can't always predict. Again, it was an offshoot of Black news, which was a riff off of new news, and just kind of happened randomly. And now here we are. And I'm going to ride this little ride this ride, see where it takes me. Because when it comes to social media, if something hits, you got to see where it can take you. Now, I'm not one of these creators who, if something is hitting, will just do it back to back to back to back, because that's boring to me. Like, for instance, I've had a number of videos go viral when I like pull out my whiteboard. I think we've spoken about this. I didn't then start saying every video now is going to be a whiteboard video, because that's boring to me. But I know that is something that historically has worked. So I add it to my arsenal of a thing like, okay, I'll return to that. Same with, I've done PowerPoint presentations that have done really well. Obviously, Taylor Swift content does well. Beyonce content does well. And now I know white news does well. So I've added it to my bank of content that does well. It's a well I will return to, not one that I'll do every single day, because again, that's just like not how I work as a creator. I think some people do that very well. I think if being a content creator were my full-time job, I might do that, because I'd be like, look, I got to just hit what works, hit it hard, hit it till it runs out. All of that sounded a bit vulgar. The point is, if it were my full-time job, maybe I'd feel like I have to do that, but it's not my full-time job. And so it more is now something in my arsenal that seems to please the people. And I hope people know that it's coming from a good place. Like, white people, I got love for you. What song is that? That's the Taylor Swift song. Is it Seven? Is it Seven from Folklore? It's definitely on Folklore. I might be wrong about the song. Anyway, the point is, white people, I got love for you. I really do. My daughter is a quarter white. Did y'all know that? Did y'all know that? That my husband is half white and therefore my daughter is a quarter white? So I got love for y'all. It's coming from a good place. It's coming from a very good-hearted place. I think sometimes we would all get along better if we all just learned to laugh with one another. That's at least my theory. So hopefully everyone understands where it's coming from. And with that, before we get out of here, I do have to talk about Love is Blind, which actually is one of the white news videos that has blown up recently on social. I have to talk about it because I came across this article in Glamour where they interview the Jessica Barrett, the baddie, the doctor who left Chris's lame ass as soon as he attempted to tell her that her body wasn't good enough for him. If you're not caught up, let me set the scene. There is this short white man, and short is fine, okay? But I'm just trying to paint a picture. Short white man, extremely average looking in the face. Some might even say below average, but I will be generous and say average looking short white man, average build as far as I can tell, who by the grace of God ended up getting engaged to Jessica Barrett. She's a Columbus resident, so I might meet her one day. We don't know. She lives in my city. Jessica Barrett is an internal medicine, like infectious disease doctor. That's her real job, okay? 38, owns her own home, a nice 4-bedroom home, very nice 4-bedroom home. Really has her shit together. Doing it big. He somehow, and she's beautiful, okay? Can't leave that out. Beautiful. He somehow ends up engaged to her. That's the magic of the pods, honey, because I really don't know that I could see it happening any other way. He somehow ends up engaged to her. And at first, it's all going very well. Oh, it's all going very well. Then he sees her home. Okay? They all fly home from Cabo or wherever in Mexico they were. He sees her home. And what happens? He negs her the next day. Basically has a conversation and just says, I just feel like the women I date usually do CrossFit every day. They do Pilates every day. And he says it multiple times. She sits there and lets him get all of this off of her chest. Never yells, doesn't cuss him out, nothing. I'm like, oh my God, I need to take lessons from her. Let any man, truly any man attempt to say anything to me about my body, I would curse you out in multiple languages. And I only speak the one, so it would get very real very quickly. She sits there very calmly, lets him get all that bullshit out, and then says, well, If my body isn't the body you want, I'm not going to beg you to love me. Stands up and goes home. And that's that. Now, it's clear by what he does afterwards, which we learn afterwards. He's calling her, he's talking to his friends, he is crashing the fuck out. He was not trying to break up with her. He was trying to put her in her place. He was trying to make her feel bad enough about herself so that he could feel superior about himself, because after he saw her house, how good she had it, how truly out of his league she was, he needed to bring her down a peg. Problem is, Jess said, "Oh, I'm not about that life." Me? Me? No, I'm not about that life. She knows her worth. So she stood up and went the fuck home. Oh, it was a glorious moment. Even if you don't watch Love is Blind, I encourage you to watch that moment. It was fantastic. Well, Glamour interviewed her, and it somehow is better now. Now I'm reading the interview. I already loved this woman. I love her more. I just want to share some of the things that she said because I think it might help you feel better about yourself. Okay. She feels so good about herself that when I read the article, it made me feel better about myself. And that is a baddie. Let's get into it. This exchange right here, I'm going to read in full because I loved it. Okay. So Glamour asks, "It felt very powerful to watch you remain so stoic throughout the conversation. What was going on inside your head?" Jessica responds, "I was very much trying to remain calm because obviously this was completely blindsiding. There was no conversation about anything like this prior to that conversation. So I kind of went into this like lock-in zone. As you know, I have done a lot in my life. I work really hard. I do very well under pressure. I have to deal with very tough conversations frequently at work, and my gears were definitely turning. I was definitely listening, taking in everything that he said, and it was absolutely a switch that flipped for me. In that moment, I knew that there was no way that this man was going to be in my life. And I knew that it was up to me to handle that in such a way that I would be proud of when I had to watch it a year later." Icon. She said a switch flipped and she knew in a moment, oh, this man is not going to be in my life anymore. Not, oh, we're not going to talk tonight. Not, oh, this is going to cause a rift. No. It went from I'm in love with you and I want to marry you to you will never have the pleasure of seeing me or being with me again in an instant. And then she had the composure to say, so now when I watch this back, what is it I'm going to want to see? Oh my God, that is icon behavior. Okay, next question. "Are you happy with how it came across now that you've seen it?" She replies, "I am extremely happy with how I handled myself. Of course, I'm human. I wanted to freak out and do all the things we would want to do. But also, I didn't think that he deserved any of that energy of mine. So I essentially just took in the information, had a mental funeral for him, and went on about my day." My God. My God. This woman, I really want to meet her. If she does some kind of meet and greet in Columbus, I will be there. I'll be in the front row because that is everything. I took in the information, had a mental funeral for him, and went on about my day. RIP to that man. You're dead. She said you're dead to me. What more did I need to do but get up and leave? Funeral's over. Casket's closed. Grave is buried. Like, that is so iconic. And just so, when I say it made me feel better about myself, it like honestly made me think about the people that I've given time to, continue to give time to in my mind. When this woman is able to host a little mental funeral in an instant, I aspire. I aspire because we give people so much of our energy they don't deserve. And I love that she is grown, good and grown, and said, oh, no. Couldn't be me. Okay, and then she goes and gives us a lot more context on how the breakup actually went down. If you're interested in the show or a fan of the show, I would recommend like reading the whole thing because she gives more context. Like there's a lot we didn't see, not more of her talking to him. She basically says that happened one night. Then the next day she already knew like, I'm going to go do my exit interview with Netflix. And I guess I haven't explicitly told him I'm never going to see you again. And so she called him for 2 minutes, she says, to say, look, this is just a courtesy call. It's over. We're never going to be together. I never want to see you again. And I figured I should say that to you before I say it to the cameras. Bye. That was the whole conversation. The fact that she was like, you know what, I'm still going to be the better person and at least say to you what should be obvious, which is, no, you're never going to get it. Not this time. Never going to get it. Very, very, very grown woman behavior of her. And then the last bit I wanted to read was her response to this question. You mentioned that if you'd had that conversation 3 years ago, it would have broken you. How did you build up your resiliency? She replies, I spent a lot of time after my divorce really just focusing on myself. I honestly babied myself for a long time. I tried to be very kind to myself. When I thought bad things about myself or even said bad things about myself, I tried to envision my baby sister. And if it was something that I wouldn't say to her or think about her, I would kind of take it back and reframe it out loud. I spent several years doing that. In society and the way that we grew up as women, there is an immense amount of pressure to be perfect. And especially in the field that I'm in and the challenging things that I've done in my life, I feel that tremendously. And so it was a lot of hard work to kind of reframe my thought process and love myself. And I really threw myself into it. I am in a place now where I'm so proud of myself and I'm so proud of who I am. I know that nobody's going to change that or make me feel bad about it. She better preach. Listen, Jessica Barrett, let me tell you this. I am, and I think we all are, so proud of you, so happy for you. You are deserving of real, true love from a real man or not a man. I don't know your whole life. From someone who is going to treat you with the respect you deserve. And if that person doesn't exist, thank God you know yourself and love yourself and value yourself, and have such a rich life. And I mean rich in the texture of your life, the people you hold on to, how you treat yourself and your family. It's inspiring. I want you to know, if this makes its way to you, I'm inspired by you. It was such a delight watching you walk away from that troll of a man, watching you know your self-worth. And now reading this interview and knowing that that is not happenstance. That is something you actively worked on. I'm inspired by that because it is something I'm actively working on. So I just want to say, I love it. I love it. I love it. I'm a fan. I hope we run into each other in a bar. And I hope if we do run into each other, that I don't embarrass myself too bad. Okay? I might embarrass myself. Hopefully not too bad. And that's all we have for today, folks. I know I took us to a few different places, a few different emotions. Hopefully you were rocking with me the whole time, and I'll see you next time.